Hello, and welcome to episode 1 of Slightly Confused with Elena Bateman. I am your host, Elena Bateman. I don't know who else would be here on the first episode of a podcast with my name in. I promise this won't feel so awkward. It's the first time, everyone's first time's a little bit awkward, I'm sure. I mean, maybe it wasn't. Maybe you don't even have a podcast. I don't know. I mean, everyone has a podcast these days. It's why I'm doing it. I mean, it's not why I'm doing it, but it does feel natural for me to do it, does it not? Everyone has a podcast. So when someone announces that they have a podcast, everyone is just like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. I'll be honest, I don't listen to that many podcasts. I always thought for a really long time that podcasts weren't for me. And I don't know why I thought that. I think it's because I thought every podcast was like an intellectual thing, and I thought it would be a bit like attending a uni lecture, and I just don't need more of that in my life. I'll be honest. I am so done with learning things. I, I am tapping out. I feel like I don't need any more knowledge in my brain. I've hit capacity. It's 24 years, of learning things. I would like to not receive any new information for a while, which is a really good thing to say at the start of a series of podcast episodes called Slightly Confused, because now you know why I'm slightly confused. It's because I stopped trying to learn new things. I don't even know how I got to this part of the conversation. What were we talking about? Uni lectures, right? Okay. I need someone here to put me back on track with my tangents. Otherwise, this is just going to be a podcast of tangents. Maybe you'll like that. I don't know. Maybe you all have undiagnosed ADHD as well. I don't know. But yeah, I basically didn't listen to podcasts for a really long time because I just didn't want to feel like I was being lectured to. And then I kind of realized that podcasting is a really diverse genre. There are so many different types of podcasts that talk about so many different types of things. Like you could have podcasts like Emma Chamberlain's, who is like super personal, talks about her life, her experiences, things she's learned. I'm not interested in the latter one, but that kind of made me realize that podcasting could be something super informal and fun and like a chat with a friend rather than something that felt super stressful. I'm the kind of person that likes having background noise, so I don't really understand why I didn't discover podcasting as like a genre sooner, because I'm obsessed with video essays, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to do a podcast, because I would love to make video essays on YouTube, but I just there's a lot of research that has to go into them as a format, and I just know that if I said the wrong thing one time, I'm going to get roasted alive in the comments, and I just don't need that. I'm a very stressed and anxious person. Like, I don't enjoy getting things wrong and like upsetting people. And I think the idea of creating like an academic work and putting it on the internet for people to judge and critique is just too much for me, because I know I'd forget something. I know I would. And then, people just rip you apart. And I can't have that on my subconscious, or my conscious. I can't have it at all, actually, on any part of my brain. It just really stresses me out. But I wanted a space where I could make long form content, where I could just kind of talk about what's on my mind or things that have been stressing me out lately or life in general. And then I was like, hey, I can do that in a podcast. And then people don't have to be so on it about me not using the correct sources, because the source is only my brain. That's it. You can't hold me to a higher standard of like academic referencing, because guess what? There is no academic referencing, because this is a podcast. I just feel like people will expect less of me from a podcast than if I made video essays. So there we are. But yeah, I always listen to video essays like in the background. Dylan, Friendly Space Ninja, is like my comfort background YouTuber. I just put him on, like his videos, in the background of anything that I do. And it just helps me concentrate. I don't know what it is, but if there's not something else going on, the silence is deafening. I genuinely feel like I'm being crushed alive if my brain is not stimulated constantly. Which I don't know if that's the fault of the internet. Thinking about this, because when you actually take a moment to kind of look at how much the internet has impacted you as a person, I'm genuinely concerned that the internet has fully molded my personality at this point. Like, even the little things that I feel are innate to me as a person, I don't actually know if they are. Or if they feel like they're innate because my whole existence has been formed by the internet and now it's just like second nature to behave in certain ways that I've been taught to behave because of my obsession with the internet. And that sounds really bizarre, but my attention span, and you hear this all the time about how like TikTok ruined our attention spans. It's true. I have the attention span of like a raw potato. I can't I'm just not physically present for anything. Um which is ironic because I like video essays and I like listening to them. But the thing is, I listen to them almost with like a subconscious part of my brain because the conscious part is thinking about 100 different things. I'm just using it as background noise almost to platform my own thoughts. And I genuinely could not. It's like movies, right? I'll watch a movie, but I'll skip the bits that are taking too long. Am I a bad person? Probably. I'm sorry, directors, but that long shot that you did to build tension, I skipped it. I did. I'm sorry. Doesn't need to take 25 seconds to zoom in on a woman's sad face. I get that she's sad. I understood that within the first few seconds because my emotional intelligence through the roof. But I don't remember a time where I used to watch whole movies. I don't. And I feel like that must be an internet thing because I think it must have been when I was a kid, when I wasn't as online as I am now, that I was the last time I showed a genuine interest in movies as a full thing without skipping any parts. When I started going on the internet more when I was like 10, 11, that kind of period, I definitely noticed that my attention span shortened. And I know that that's the way that algorithms need you to be, because in order to have you stay on the platform for longer, you need to consume higher levels of content most of the time. And that means that you need to get bored of whatever you're doing in your real life and stay online for that dopamine fix, that instant gratification of clicking on a new video, consuming a little bit of knowledge or getting a little bit of entertainment, then the next one, then the next one. And it creates like a positive feedback loop that ultimately shortens your attention span and increases your cravings for like that validation and that dopamine, which super interesting. Any neuroscientists in the chat want to explain to me how I can undo that? Because at this point, I genuinely feel like I am hardwired not to pay attention to things for a long period of time. And I really am trying to fix it. And one of the main ways I'm trying to fix it is through reading. I don't know if you guys read. Can you read? I don't know. I'm not going to make any assumptions. I don't know. But I genuinely think I can't read anymore. I'm not even joking. I picked up a book the other day, and this is ironic because like I am still in uni, but I'm going to tell you a little secret. I have not read a single one of my mandatory university texts since week 1, year 1 of university. I'm sorry. I am, but it was boring. And I have an issue with overly pretentious works. Like, if you've ever been to uni or you're planning on going to uni, or if you've studied any kind of academic subject ever, you will notice that there are some authors who purposely write their texts in artificially complex ways, right? So they'll write something in a super pompous, over academic language that is just so unnecessary. And it really annoys me. It is one of my biggest pet peeves about academic literature is that 99% of the concepts and ideas that these people are explaining could be explained to a 5-year-old perfectly fine. You could genuinely dumb down the language and it still be able to completely accurately explain what you're trying to say. And instead, they write in this super gatekeepy way, right? Because they use language and vocabularies that most people don't know. And it's super artificial because no one fucking talks like that. I'm sorry, bestie, but no one talks like that. Why do you don't need to use ontological that many times. You don't. What is all this word fluff? Get rid of it. And I read this text. If you don't know, I studied politics and economics at Bath Uni. And it was this text, I think it was called like of cloudworks and clockworks and clouds and clockworks, something like that. It was about like ontology and epistemology, which basically is just like the thought processes and how certain concepts work. To be honest, I don't even remember much of it because this was like 2.5, 3 years ago. But it's essentially just trying to explain how people come up with theories and concepts and explaining the building blocks that make those concepts and how they function in a wider structure, right? And it was so pompous, so artificially difficult to read because they want to make themselves sound more complicated. And arguably, yes, you could say that like ontology and epistemology are quite difficult to define concepts or whatever. Most of you have no idea what I'm talking about and have zoned out at this point. Fair enough, bestie. I understand the short attention span. It's hard. But it was so honestly infuriating with the fact that it was just so up its own arse that I was like, I'm not going to read ever again. You've ruined it for me. I'm done. Congratulations, bestie. I will never read again because of you. And it really got in my head really rigidly that academic texts are deliberately pompous because they want to try and make themselves seem smarter and gatekeep information. And I don't think you should gatekeep information. I genuinely believe that nearly everything can be explained in incredibly simplistic ways so that it's accessible to the majority of the world, right? And I think information is power, so I fully want people to be able to understand as much as possible, because when you think about most of the biases and hatreds that people have and notions that people have about certain things or people or groups, it all comes from a lack of knowledge and a lot of the time a lack of like critical thinking in literature. So if you see something online, you don't think about it in a way that's like, oh, is this true? Are they manipulating statistics or whatever? And a lot of that comes because critical thinking isn't taught, and a lot of the times it's because academic literature, statistics, all of this stuff, people don't teach them in a way that is digestible and understandable. So people just assume when they see, oh, a scientist says XYZ about XYZ group, people are like, oh, yeah, sure. And what they don't realize is like a super manipulated statistic with conclusions that are written in like super artificially stupid language. So anyone can like just say that it means this and people be like, yeah, because the original text is not accessible. And it's something that bothers me is because people really do exploit that in other people. Because knowledge is not accessible a lot of the time, because of the way it's written and because of the way it's put behind paywalls, whether it's a university fees or whether it's behind like, I don't know, like Justa, I think, is like an article site and you have to pay for it and it's a lot of money and people can't see the original sources. Because of that, a lot of people just trust what other people say about that thing. And it's not great. It's not great because a lot of people on the internet do not have your best intentions at heart. They have an agenda themselves. I mean, everyone has an agenda, but it makes me so angry when people can't understand something from the source themselves, because then they have to trust what other people tell them about X thing. And a lot of the time that's where, you get these completely poor takes coming out of people on the internet. And it's because they trusted something that someone else said about a source that they don't have access to or they can't understand because of the language used. And I want people to have knowledge. I do. Which is ironic because I started this podcast by saying I don't want to learn any more things. I don't want to learn any more things. I've reached capacity, but I'd like other people to be able to learn things easily, accessibly. But like this, I kind of took up like this individual campaign against reading academic literature because of that one text, which is not great because I have to write my dissertation this month. And I don't want to read. Oh, my cat's joined me. Hi, baby. Are you going to lie on my lap? Okay. Oh, no, you don't want to lie on my lap? Okay, what do you want to do, babe? My cat Atlas has just joined the podcast. What have you got to say, my friend? Do you think I had great takes and that's why you've come to sit with me? He does this thing where he can't decide where or how he wants to sit, and he always ends up on my lap. But he's like has to evaluate his options before he lies here. Also, I am wearing my pajamas. Hi, Atlas. If you're not watching the video version of this on youtube.com/at slightly confused, you're missing out right now because he is being full baby. Full baby. What do you have to say? I am wearing my pajamas, and I thought I'd put on my fanciest pajamas for this podcast today. So you got the like A grade pajamas. I got them in the sale. So they're my fancy that I would never have bought if they were full price pajamas, and I love that for me, honestly. This is why I'm covered in cat hair, by the way. Always in every video I've ever filmed, I'm covered in cat hair. This is why. This I raised this child with attachment issues. Like I mollycoddled him. I babied this cat so much, like my actual child. And so now he's obsessed with me. And don't get me wrong, I am clingy and needy, so I do enjoy the validation. But does he now get separation anxiety? Yes. It's not good. I've been undoing it slowly, to be fair. It's not so bad that like I can't shower without him, but occasionally he will like claw at a door. If I'm in bed asleep and he's being feisty that day, like he just wants to sit on me all the time. Like he does sit on me when I sleep, and sometimes he just will not stop sitting on me and waking me up. So sometimes he has to go out of the room. And then in the morning, he'll start just screaming at the bedroom door, like, "Woman, I know you're in there, open up." It's time for me now. So yeah, he is a big baby. But honestly, that's what you get for having a child in quarantine. Like, he's a COVID baby. He really is. And so he didn't really see many other people, and I didn't leave him alone because I couldn't go outside. So it's not really my fault. It is kind of Big Rona's fault, but nevertheless, the outcome is a very clingy child. I don't mind it because I don't actually leave the house, so there's no negatives for him there. I don't go outside. But yeah, it does get my clothes absolutely covered in cat hair. I don't remember what we were talking about. Oh, I went on a rant about how academic literature isn't accessible and it annoys me. I am writing my dissertation this month, if anyone's interested. I'm writing it on Fox News and how they deliberately weaponized conspiracy theories for political gain and how that may have caused the January 6th insurrection of the Capitol in America. And I think it's going to be a good one. I'm excited about it. I just can't write it because I don't want to read. It's difficult. I feel like I have come full circle though, because when I was younger, I was so obsessed with academic perfectionism that I based my whole personality on being good at school. And I know we talk a lot about the gifted and talented burnout child arc, but my God, it's so real. It's a cliche, but it's true. But I've come out of it now. I've just resigned myself to the fact that I don't care anymore. And I think that's the natural, healthy place to get to as a formerly gifted kid, is that you have to get to the point where you realize that in the adult world, in the big grown-up world full of other adults, you're not very smart. And you most certainly are not the best at what you are doing. Maybe in your primary school of like 30 kids, you were really great at maths. But now in the big wide world, you're not even top 10, not top 100, top 1,000, probably not even top million. Bestie, you are like substandard. And that's something that you just have to understand and be okay with. And I think that's been really healthy for me. Realizing my complete inability to be good at a lot of things. This sounds very negative and like very self-loathing. I don't love myself. I love myself. Besties. Well, I wouldn't say love. I'm more of a neutral kind of person on that. But I just saying loathe, it lent itself too nicely to say love immediately after because they sound nice together. Like saying loathe and then I'm neutral just doesn't sound as fun. I was going for like alliteration. Oh, there's another cat. If you aren't watching the video, you're missing out. There's 2 cats here. No, don't sniff his ass, babe. We're live. We're live on the pod. Also, if you're wondering why I'm not stroking Gaia, it's because she's very scatty. We didn't have Gaia since she was a baby. We rehomed her when she was slightly older. And she's a bit awkward about being touched. So a lot of people think that I'm baby Atlas and I don't care about Gaia, but it's just that she's not as cuddly and she doesn't like being touched as much. She's very specific about when she wants to be touched. So you kind of have to just let her lead on that. Okay, oh, don't scratch me. Oh god, it's Attack of the Cats. Okay, right, there we are. You like, no, see, she didn't want stroke. I overstepped my boundaries. What are you trying to paw at? She's pawing at my t-shirt like she wants to get behind. You can't. Okay, fine. You can go behind me if you want. This cat. I don't know if any of this is making sense, by the way. I'm going to edit this podcast back and be like, wow, this is not coherent. No one is going to be able to follow or understand any of what you're saying, let alone listen to the whole thing and not lose their mind. I know it sounds super self-loathing to say that realizing that you're not good at most things is like what you need to do. But I'm not a self-loathing person. I genuinely am very happy with myself. I'm very comfortable in my life. I'm very comfortable with who I am as a person. But I just genuinely think for me, recognizing that I don't know shit has been very, very, very healthy. I think I look back on myself as a kid and I kind of understand why I was bullied. Is that like, am I not supposed to say that? But like, yes, bullying bad, okay, we get it. But like, growing up is realizing that sometimes you were annoying. Really annoying. And quite self-righteous. As a kid, I definitely, oh cats, please stop playing with the jingle thing. They're playing with like a super jingly toy. Can you go back to sleep, please, children? Mummy's trying to rant on the internet. Yes, as a child, like I did not deserve to be bullied, and I did not deserve like half of the nasty things that were said and done about me. And I do look back on myself as a kid and feel so sorry for the amount of pain that child and teenage me went through. But at the same time, sometimes I was super annoying. I think part of the reason for that is because I think I just had very solid opinions about things. And some of them were wrong, like super wrong. And as I've grown up and learnt more, I've changed a lot of what I thought were moral set in stone opinions that I had. And one of those, for example, is like my opinion on theft. Not going to tell you what it is, but my morals on that have changed. You can take a guess if you want. But like the more I've learned about politics and society as a whole and the way the world functions and capitalism and consumption, I understand more about how not everything is as black and white. But when I was a kid, I had very strict moral standards, and when my friends did not meet those moral standards or they said something that I felt wasn't in line with those standards, I was very openly against it. And I think when you're like 14 years old being lectured about why you can't say that's gay by another 14-year-old, they're gonna like, that's just annoying. I was right. Like, I objectively, Hilary Duff agrees with me. If you don't know Hilary Duff, she went on a whole like campaign to say don't say gay, and essentially when people used to be like that's so gay about anything even remotely bad, Hilary Duff was like, no bestie, not having it. She really did it for the gays. She showed up and I love that for her. But like I was that person except more annoying and British, and I didn't do myself any favors because sometimes not everything was that deep, but I took it too far. And that made me like a target. Like I would get really angry about things that people just did not care about. Like they would make a passing comment and I would take it like it was super fucking deep. And most of the time it wasn't. But I didn't have like a chill setting, if that makes sense. Like I was the person who thought that PE was the Olympics. You know what I mean? Like very bullyable when when we look at it. And like, I'm not saying I deserved it, but I'm just saying that God's timing was always right. Look, the truth is, I was like 14 years old and I really thought that I had everything figured out. And so I had like a bit of an arrogance about me because my moral standards were so concrete that I wasn't afraid to voice my opinions and stand up for things that I thought were right, which are objectively good qualities. Like for me, I would rather have someone that's outspoken about something that they believe is right or wrong, respectively, and kind of stands up for those things than someone who is very much like, I don't care, I don't want to, raise my head above a crowd or whatever, because for me, that's just what I value in friends. And I value that in people when people are outspoken about how they feel about certain things, and particularly things that matter to me, like political issues and social issues. It's important for me as a person. It might not be for you, and that's fine. But so for me, I was like quite chuffed with the fact that I was strong enough as an individual to do that when I was younger. But at the same time, a lot of my opinions were wrong because I was like 13, 14 years old and I didn't know a lot about the world. Like I was viewing things so black and white as if I'd figured it out when I was 14, and now I look back as a 24-year-old. Bestie, you just haven't got the nuance yet. And understanding that nearly everything is subjective and open to interpretation, and there are certain contexts where this won't apply and that won't apply, and understanding that at 14 you don't have the perspective to be able to, or the knowledge really, to be able to be like, yes, this is right, this is wrong, and be so almost arrogant in your trust in that belief. Like I can see why it pissed people off. Like you don't want to, as a 14-year-old, be lectured by another 14-year-old about ethics of stealing a pick and mix sweet. Like you could just get over it, doesn't need to be that deep. I don't know how we got here. I'm just like fully fleshing out my experiences with childhood trauma. I don't know how do we get here? I genuinely don't know how we got here. How do I always end up like on these super deep topics? But yeah, I think like growing as an individual is understanding that you don't need to be perfect all of the time, number one, and also understanding that you're not right all of the time. As someone who is like a chronic perfectionist, learning that actually I am wrong as many times as I am right, and learning that I am not the best in the room at anything has been super healthy for me. It's been super humbling. And it's allowed me to learn a lot more. I was always one of those people that talked more than I listened. And as I've aged a bit more, like acting like I'm really old, I'm 24. Like I'm not, I mean, I do have a lot of grey hairs, but I think it's caused by stress, to be honest with you. But learning that I don't know everything and that I have way more to learn and gain from by just closing my mouth occasionally, and opening my ears has been super humbling and really good and healthy for me. It also means that I've kind of put myself less on an academic validation grind. University, especially during COVID, is a big reason for that. It's difficult to be good at things when they're so easy to not do. I didn't go to 90% of my university classes. And like I said, I haven't really participated in uni, but I was doing really well, and that wasn't good. For years 1 and 2, I was averaging like a first overall, and if you don't know how the grading system is, a first is like the highest you can get in your degree in the UK. And I wasn't doing anything. I didn't deserve it. I wasn't attending classes. I was pretty much just guessing 90% of the stuff. The problem is that the degree that I'm doing, politics and economics, the politics part, if you can, pretty much any idea you've had is not unique or original. So you can write a whole essay. This is going to get me in trouble with uni. You can write a whole essay based entirely on your opinions, and then just Google that opinion and find articles that support that opinion. And then what I would do is I would just sub in those articles where I needed citation for my arguments, right? And that would be my essay. I wouldn't have to do any reading. I would basically not research what I was writing, and I was getting really good grades. And it just goes to show, that was a really good experience, number one, because I was realizing that I'm not very smart and that people have had the ideas that I've had hundreds of times over. But two, it was really bad because I wasn't doing any real work, and I was getting that kind of validation of good grades, right? And then in my final year, which is this year, I have like 1 month of uni left. Suddenly they started marking us a lot harsher. And I couldn't get away with the same things that I was doing before. And I got my lowest ever university grade. And now I think I can't get a first overall in my degree. And that was really hard to deal with, because the grade was so low that I was like, oh, goddamn, my average got dragged down so much. And that was super earth shattering and super sad. And I had to confront the demon of, bestie, you're trying to do a lot of things at once here, and you're not taking any of them very seriously. You don't really deserve a good grade. And kind of doing that look in the moment, self-evaluation moment of, oh yeah, actually, I'm not putting in the level of work or effort that someone who's deserving of this grade gets. And that was super healthy for me. Sad and really frustrating and really upsetting to deal with, but super healthy. Because now I'm like, okay, actually, I'm fine not getting a first in my degree. Whereas before I was super adamant that I needed to get that. Recognizing that sometimes you aren't deserving of a good grade. And that is a big part of my like self-growth process. Because when you're quite good at academics as a kid and you don't really have to try, when you're confronted with something that you're not naturally good at, it's really difficult to swallow, and then you just give up. Like, I am so easily frustrated by things that I don't understand, and it is not good. It is 100% based on the fact that I was naturally good at a lot of things growing up, and people praised me so much for that I never had to try. And now I don't have the perseverance and the strength to continue to learn things that are difficult, like a lot of other people who've worked really hard their whole lives to understand certain things do. And those people are so much more resilient. There's so much lower stress in when they're confronted with something they don't understand because they've done it before. Whereas me and my stupidity are just like, I just rage quit. I rage quit, and it's not good. And I feel like I have slightly gotten over that now, which is something that I'm really glad I have done, because you can't go through your life not doing things that are difficult. And that's what I was trying to do, basically. Which it's not good. Like, it's not healthy, to be honest with you. But yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with, is that they were praised a lot as a kid for academics, and now they base their whole worth on it. And then when they suddenly don't do well, they're like, who am I? What am I doing? And then they go into the big real world and realize they're not very good at a lot of things, and then they can't get better at those things because they get so frustrated that they don't understand it. And it's just like a really negative situation. So yeah, even though I'm not happy with uni overall, and the fact that I paid £9,000 a year for like Zoom calls, not ideal. But it did teach me some important life lessons, and I feel like I have finally gotten over the fact that I am not going to be good at a lot of things, and that's okay. And that I don't actually deserve a lot of the grades that I get because I don't put the work in, and it takes away from people who do put the work in. And it also taught me that I need to put the work in when something's important to me, because I thought getting a first was important to me, and it just wasn't. Just at the end of the day, it wasn't, because I would have done it if it mattered a lot, and I didn't. So yeah, I've kind of come to terms with that now. I feel like I'm gonna have to get better in the whole podcast thing of staying on topic, because we've covered so many different topics, and I don't know how we got here. This felt like I was just dumping childhood trauma. That's probably not a good thing to do, right? That's probably not a nice thing to listen to. I don't know. I mean, I've never done a podcast before. I do have like more fleshed out ideas for the next few podcasts, but I didn't really want to set a distinct topic for this podcast, the first one, because I don't really know how I function in podcasting, like as a genre. Most of my videos have a very clear topic and a narration throughout, and it makes sense that I can stay on the topic and talk about that because it's basically planned out, right? It's written in stone because the content is what the content is. With a podcast, I don't know how I free think, if that makes sense. I talk to myself a lot in average life. I literally create imaginary scenarios and voice different characters. It's probably enough to get me institutionalized in like the 1800s. with like hysteria or something. But I think I just wanted to give myself the space to kind of do that in the podcast, because I thought I would be really good at this because of that. But I wanted to basically give myself the opportunity to just do a long form piece of content that's a train of consciousness and see where it goes, because I have never done this before with an audience um at all, right? And I just thought it would be a good exercise to give myself free reign for that. Hi Gaia. But the rest of the podcast episodes are pretty more planned out. So most of the podcast episodes, and I have some guests lined up already, have a specific topic that either I or a guest want to talk about. It's usually something that we are slightly confused about or something that we want to discuss and kind of go over. That's the general plan for most of the podcasts. But I just wanted the first podcast to be, I'm slightly confused about podcasting, like as a genre. I wanted it to kind of just be a train of consciousness about what's on my mind right now. I'm things that I'm confused about, things that have been revelations recently, things that I just want to discuss, and just have that kind of conversation, I guess, as a entry to the audience to see kind of like how it might be as a podcast. I would like to know what kind of podcast topics you guys would like to discuss. So some of the topics that I have as discussions with and without guests are, so the general premise is like I'm slightly confused about, or X guest is slightly confused about, and then the topic. So we've got happiness, social media, the alt-right pipeline, which is, if you don't know, a bit political, but are basically about the radicalization of people on like the manosphere TikTok, you know, red pill, blue pill, that kind of reactionary content based around toxic masculinity, Andrew Tate, that whole thing, and how that leads into like mainstream politics, is in transphobia or voting for far right parties. That's something that really interests me. Might be a bit heavier than general chit chat we've had today, discussing like light childhood trauma. But I thought that'd be a fun topic. We've got eating disorders, as you guys know. I've had 2 eating disorders throughout my life. Absolutely fine now. But it is something that I wanted to talk about, particularly because on social media at the moment, I'm seeing the return of what they call heroin chic, which is concerning and something that was very much a thing when I was younger. And I do think is partly to blame for my relationship with food being so bad when I was younger. So it's something I want to talk about. Men, that's basically it for that one. Video essays in general is a topic of conversation. LinkedIn, that's something else I want to talk about. And shaving and the infantilization of women. Essentially, I see a lot of this kind of discussion is that, do I like it or am I just socially conditioned to like it? Particularly around shaving or fashion trends or plastic surgery. And a lot of the talking points I see about it in video essays are that women only like these things because they're socially conditioned to. And my opinion on that is very much that infantilizes women. It assumes that women are 100% products of their social environment and are incapable of making valid choices based on their own desires. And it's a fine line, and I'm not saying that the other people are wrong. I just think it's a bit more complex than one way or the other, that we're all influenced by social politics or social constructs, and that we have no individual autonomy, or that we are, you know, all individually autonomous and without any influence from our environment. And I just feel like there's a bit more nuance to be had in that conversation, and I thought it would be really fun to discuss that on the podcast with you guys. So yeah, these are things that I'm really passionate about, that I really am looking forward to talking about. There's also a couple of podcast episodes based on specific stories from my childhood that I want to talk about. But yeah, I think today's episode was just a bit more free-flowing. Maybe that was a mistake, because it won't be like this in all of the podcasts. But I just wanted to kind of do a little introduction to me and how my brain works, which is lots of tangents, to kind of set the tone of the podcast, and just kind of talk, I guess, and have the space to talk. And I just wanted to kind of create an environment where it's okay to be confused about things. It's okay not to be right all the time, and it's okay to have opinions that aren't fully formed yet. I feel like the internet at the moment, we're very much in a time where people expect you to have fully formed opinions on things that you've never even heard of or understood. And there are things that are important for you to understand and know about, but I get very frustrated when I see online there's a lot of this narrative that you should know something. and you should be an expert in that thing, even though you've never even heard of it. And then people don't take the time to help you find your footing in that particular subject. They're just kind of like mad at you that you don't know it. And then you have to find your own sources. And like I said earlier, this kind of links back to the fact that a lot of the time you can't get access to those sources. Sometimes they're written in ways that aren't digestible. Sometimes they're paywalled. And so then you kind of have to trust what other people tell you about those things. And that leads you up very easily to be manipulated. And then you form biases that you don't really even know that you have because you don't understand the subject at large. Which actually is a really nice circle that I just did there that was completely accidental. Like back to the start of the podcast, that's what my English teacher taught me. Peel, point, evidence, point, evidence, explain, link. There you are. That's what it is. I think maybe I got the middle two mixed up, but I don't know. Maybe you should put two E's in a anagram. It's going to be confusing. I just wanted to create like a space where it's okay to talk about things that you have opinions on, that maybe you just say, hey, I'm not 100% sure about this, but I want to talk about it, and have a conversation. I would love for people to share their experiences with certain things with me, and anything that I talk about, I'd love for people to be like, hey, have you considered this, or have you thought about that? And the whole point of the podcast, I just want it to be like me being confused and being okay with being confused, because knowing that you don't know everything is a really good state to be in, because it means you listen to people. And ironically, that is a very funny point to get to on a podcast where you can only hear me talk. And I don't listen to anyone because I'm the one talking. So that is a what an evaluative point from me. Okay, I'm the only podcast host who has come to the conclusion in their first episode that they should talk less and listen more. Great. I'm sure this podcast is going to be super good. Given that the podcast host has decided that she should no longer talk. But yeah, I don't know if that's a good point to end on. I feel like it probably is. I don't know how long this has been. Is it almost 40 minutes? I think so. I think it's essentially, I just wanted a space where I could be confused and talk about things with you. I don't have it all figured out, as you can tell. My brain is as erratic as the British weather. I don't know things. And I think that's okay. I think that's healthy, actually. And I'm embracing the confusion, and I hope you embrace it with me too. Thank you very much for tuning in to episode 1. I appreciate you being here. There are new episodes every week, and I also have a Patreon called Slightly Confused. If you would like to support, you get access to early episodes and also a little Q&A live stream, a little private exclusive one. It's there if you want it. There's a link down in the description. Let me know what you thought of this. Like I said, I apologize. It was a little bit rambly, bit all over the place, but we will have topics for next week, and we'll have topics to talk about otherwise. And let me know any guests that you guys would like to have on as well. That would be nice. Thank you for listening. I guess I don't know how to sign up a podcast. I don't know what I'm doing. Have a great rest of your day, or night, or mid-afternoon. Okay, bye.